Amanda. Amandla. Amandla. Viva SACP, viva. Viva the Reconfigured Alliance, viva. Viva COSATU, viva. Viva Working Class Unity, viva. Haitsuge Sanko, haitsuge. Haikopane COSAS, haikopane. Haikopane SASCO, haikopane. Thanks, General Secretary of the party, National Chairperson, officials of the party and members of the Central Committee, and delegates. The declaration reads as follows. We, delegates of the 4th Special National Congress of the South African Communist Party, representing 319,000 party members, carrying on our shoulders the aspirations and hopes of the working class of our country, convened from 9 to 12 December 2019 in Ekurhuleni. Guided by the theme, Rebuild Our Movement, Socialism is the Future, Build It Now, we evaluated the progress made since our 14th National Congress held in 2017, the challenges experienced by the party and our people, especially the working class and poor. We received Central Committee reports, held robust deliberations and adopted resolutions and this declaration in our continuing struggle to place the National Democratic Revolution onto a second radical phase and advance to socialism. The Special National Congress took place against the background of a deep crisis, particularly affecting the working class and poor of our country. This crisis is typified by a stagnant economy that is continuing to shed jobs in the context of high unemployment rate, entrenched poverty, widening inequality, and unresolved legacy of uneven development. There are at least 4 major historical factors underpinning the crisis. 1, the structuring of the South African economy was based on the capitalist regime of economic exploitation and systemic underdevelopment, driven by an oppressive regime, domestic regime, and its external imperialist superiors. Internally, the social engineering of our country's economy was forged in a colonial relationship between a white minority supremacist bloc and a brutally dispossessed and proletarian black majority. The oppressed were marginalized into native reserves, in inverted commas, and later urban townships, and a huge pool of underemployed and unemployed forced to sell their labor power on a distant capitalist market. Externally, the structuring of the emergent capitalist economy that was to prevail in our country established South Africa's semi-peripheral positioning. Our country was incorporated into, but subordinated within the global capitalist imperialist accumulation regime, essentially as an exporter of primary commodities, mainly minerals, produced on the basis of super black labor. 2, there was lack of structural transformation after our 1994 democratic breakthrough, going deep to the root to rid our country's economy of colonial futures and embark on a path of its full development towards collective prosperity. This prevailed as a result of the rise of the neoliberal 1996 class project to dominate. Key state-owned enterprises that should have been transformed to thrive were not recapitalized, ignoring the fact that they now had to serve all the people on a non-racial basis rather than just a tiny minority. This is the context in which there was no additional power generation capacity built for Eskom, a decision made in favor of intended introduction of private profiteering participation and competition in the electricity generation sector. As a result, Eskom finds itself today with aging power stations that are increasingly unreliable, and the country is frequently plunged into load shedding. The 1996 Gear Class project also carried out the privatization of state-owned enterprises, which started in the last decades of the apartheid regime and pushed neoliberal shock therapy. This in various ways deprived our country of the resources it needed to build democratic productive capacity and thus support economic and broader social development. 3, the global capitalist meltdown in 2008, especially its aftermath, remains persistent globally. This is the context in which growth, even in a number of major economies, remains subdued and stagnantly low. The state was tenderized, in other words, divided into tenders, awarded to the highest bidders, or whoever is politically connected, and within this context, public resources were looted, more so under state capture. The widespread corruption was accompanied by government management. State institutions, including Parliament, as the Constitutional Court did find at least in one case, failed to play their role. They were weakened and others were co-opted to either turn a blind eye to the road or assist it. The Special National Congress noted that neoliberal economic policies and the structural stagnation of our economy exacerbate the crisis of social reproduction resulting from inequality, unemployment, and poverty. The crisis is reflected in the increasing inability of households and communities to make ends meet. Its burden is mostly carried by women who form a leading detachment of community-based organizational efforts directed towards sustainable livelihoods for social reproduction through unpaid labor and social activities, other social activities. The burden of social reproduction crisis is also carried by the youth of our country, the majority of the unemployed, the majority in community protests and hooked into drugs, substance and alcohol abuse, as well as the majority facing the harsh realities of HIV and AIDS pandemic. The answer to the economic and social reproduction crisis that South Africa finds itself in is neither a return to the neoliberal policy regime nor laxity to allow any quota for state capture networks to reassert themselves. In nowhere does the answer lie in austeritization of transformation and development. By austeritization, we do not mean that exorbitant perks for politicians, public officials, and executives in the economy and wasteful, fruitless, and irregular expenditure should be tolerated, or that there should be no measures to cap expenditure that is not going to productive purposes. We mean a conservative fiscal policy stance involving cuts in budgets and financial support, affecting programs that are important to stimulating the economy and meeting the needs of the working class and poor. Austeritization includes increased taxes negatively affecting the working people, while the rich laugh all the way to the bank. The solution to the economic and social reproduction crisis lies in the pursuit of a democratic developmental path and state. Understanding the combined nature of the crisis, we call upon government to not fail to address the plight of the working people and poor and adopt measures that will turn around our economy. To this end, the Special National Congress adopted the following programmatic measures aimed at achieving employment creation and systemic reduction of poverty, inequality, and uneven development. Number 1, financial sector transformation. Financial sector transformation, including low-cost banking and financial services, and thus systemic elimination of financial exploitation. Building a publicly controlled developmental banking and financial sector. Building a cooperatively owned banking and broader financial sector. Strict regulation and management of the capital account to defend our economy from the problems of uncontrolled capitals outflows and inflows. Prescribed assets for productive and developmental purpose. A sovereign wealth fund to support and increase the levels of public investment. Expansion of the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank to do two things, to include two new things. Explicitly target employment growth. All of us know what their inflation targeting is, but we don't know what their growth targeting is. 2, explicit, inclusive, balanced, and sustainable targeted growth as per the Constitution. Broader economic transformation. A high-impact, comprehensive industrial policy, including digital, industrial, and innovation strategies aimed at developing our domestic productive capacity. A comprehensive socio-economic policy approach, and thus a development-oriented poverty eradication strategy with emphasis placed on support for productive activities and building sustainable livelihoods. Revitalization of the publicly owned sector of our economy, in particular but not exclusively the turnaround of our state-owned enterprises and systemic expansion of the sector to thrive. Combating state capture and other forms of corruptions in the public sector as well as across the economy on a more intensified basis. Acceleration of land redistribution and support for productive land use, especially for the poor and the working class. To this end, the Special National Congress called upon Parliament to complete the process of amending Section 25 of the Constitution to make land expropriation without compensation categorical. Increased economic and social infrastructure spend, and therefore a stimulus package focusing on developing our domestic productive capacity and turning around our economy. Review of the fiscal policy framework to boost state revenue to support industrialization and development. This should include the introduction of a wealth tax. A state-owned pharmaceutical company, in line with the commitment made by the Alliance in the ANC May 2019 General Election Manifesto, which manifesto we took to the people for endorsement in the ballot, overall alignment of our macroeconomic policy framework to support the measures we have just outlined, the objectives of the second radical phase of the National Democratic Revolution, the other commitments made in the manifesto, and the measures that follow. Sustainable livelihood and social production. We reaffirm our commitment to the national health insurance and will continue to ensure that it becomes successful. We call for adequate social protection, including social grants that are sensitive to inflation pressures and responsive to the already existing economic and social reproduction crises. An economic empowerment program directly linked to production development support for the broad masses, including a targeted focus on fostering a thriving cooperative sector in townships and villages to build sustainable livelihoods. Promulgation of a local economic development ecosystem as an integral part of social protection and alternative development models. Land and agrarian reform with focus on, but not exclusively, women and youth empowerment. Transformation of the public and community works programs to make them the employer of the last resort on the basis of decent work agenda and a training space for the unskilled. South African Airways. The Special National Congress called upon government to adopt a comprehensive aviation industrial policy anchored in turning around SAA and repositioning it as a state-owned enterprise to serve as the mainstay of our domestic aviation sector and tourism with thriving domestic and international flight routes. The strategy should include technical and professional airline capacity building through education and training programs. As part of its rescue plan, which should have been a proactive state-led process, procurement conduct, and therefore every contract entered into and tender awarded by SAA must be thoroughly scrutinized through a forensic investigation process, leaving no stone unturned. The investigation must focus on the contribution that outsourced functions and services played in plunging SAA into crisis and on value for money, irregularities, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Key executive appointments, including but not limited to the Chief Restructuring Officer who failed to restructure SAA, appointed in 2017, Interim Chief Financial Officer, SAA Technical Chief Executive Officer, and Chief Commercial Officer must also be investigated. SAA was handed over into the hands of these, in inverted commas, airline turnaround experts, as we were told, inclusive of several from abroad who have evidently failed. The Special National Congress called for accountability on the work of these airline turnaround experts, in inverted commas, and value for the money that they were paid, while SAA continued to fall deeper into crisis instead of achieving a turnaround. The investigation must also include possible conflict of interest to establish whether any one of them is linked to any company that ever received a tender or contract from SAA. The Special National Congress calls upon all trade union organizing at SAA to close ranks and work towards saving the airline, whilst at the same time saving jobs. ESCOM. The Special National Congress strongly condemned the sabotage at ESCOM, which has led to our people being without electricity, and indeed some sessions of this very Special National Congress. The SACP identifies with the painful situation that our people are experiencing as a result of load shedding. The Special National Congress mandated the Central Committee to closely follow the investigation and ensure that the saboteurs are identified and held to account. The SACP calls upon the state to regulate mining and trade of coal in the interest of national energy security. At the same time, the Special National Congress called upon government to move more decisively in pursuing a just transition to cleaner and renewable energy. ESCOM, in a turned-around form, must serve as the mainstay of reliable, cleaner, renewable, and affordable energy production in our country. Reconfiguration of the alliance and state and popular power. The Special National Congress reaffirmed the resolution and declaration adopted by the SACP 14th National Congress resolution on the state and popular power and accepted the progress made towards the reconfiguration of the alliance. We endorse the Alliance Political Council approved common paper on the reconfiguration based on the framework presented in the Central Committee Political Report and State of the Organization Report. We place emphasis on implementation and further engagements at all levels. The Special National Congress mandated lower structures of the...
All right, so we're going to come out of there for the time being. The South African Communist Party starting to wrap up its special congress, which has been taking place for the last few days, and we're waiting to hear from the General Secretary.
The Central Committee will evaluate the reports and adopt the way forward. The options available to the Central Committee this time around include allowing electoral contestation in the affected areas within the framework of the 14th SACP Special National Congress resolution on state and popular power, and based on criteria to be finalized by the Central Committee in 2020. The Special National Congress emphasized the principles articulated in the political report and the Common Alliance Reconfiguration paper approved by the Alliance Political Council. These include consensus-seeking consultation on the manifesto, on policy direction for our shared strategy of struggle and democratic transformation, and deployments and accountability, including recall, as well as alliance inclusivity and representation in electoral lists. In this regard, the SACP will not support corrupt candidates or candidates emerging from processes that were not alliance inclusive, candidates imposed by factions, or who are not supported by the community. On our part, as the SACP, we will deepen our program to build working class power and hegemony in all key sites of struggle and significant centers of power. The Special National Congress reaffirmed the SACP political program, the South African Road to Socialism, including that what the party seeks to achieve is democratic working class hegemony over the state and society. The immediate tasks of the SACP is to build working class unity and forge a popular left front as mandated by the 14th SACP National Congress resolution on the state and popular power. Last but not least, The Special National Congress strongly condemns the United States-driven imperialist destabilization in parts of Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. The SACP reaffirms its support for the national sovereignty of the people of Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Palestine, and Eritrea. We pledge our revolutionary solidarity with the national democratic struggles of the people of Swaziland, South Cameroon, Sudan, and Western Sahara. Our resolutions on party review and party reorganizations are captured in the resolutions adopted by the Congress. So ends the declaration. Thanks.
Thanks, Comrade Alex. Comrades, this is your declaration, and only delegates to this Special National Congress can decide and do what I think we should be doing. But I'm not going to prescribe what that is. I'm expecting, therefore, for the reaction of delegates. Gauteng's flag is up. Moses Mabhida, Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and KZN, Northern Cape. And there's no preference in the way I'm doing it, comrades. I just look at your flags as they rise. Free State, you are noted. Gauteng, Western Cape, noted as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
YCL, yes.
Thanks, Comrade Chair. Comrade Chair, we want to move for the adoption and acceptance of the declaration. However, there are certain areas, but we'll give it to the Secretariat just to clean the declaration and the language. That's all, Chair. We thank you.
Thanks, Gauteng. The second province, as I mentioned the names, Limpopo, come. Gauteng is moving, Limpopo.
Modula stulo rata sapota Gauteng taba tse di botse di a thabisa di a legota re a dumella.
O dira moshomo. Thank you very much. Comrades, there have been a mover and a seconder. And I don't want us to have a song unless there is a special, there is a different opinion. Seems there's none, we are all concurring and agreeing, comrades. Thank you very much. Can you clap for yourselves? Comrades, Napala, we have done our work. We have shared the processes to the best of our abilities. We have brought the Congress to this end. But as the leader of the South African Communist Party, only you can set the tone that will guide us as we leave this Special National Congress. Thanks for allowing us to chair. Thank yourselves for being able to share and differ, but at the same time being united. Can you give a song for the GS to close the meeting?
There.
Amandla! Amandla!
Viva SACP, viva! Viva the African National Congress, viva! Viva COSATU, viva! Phansi ngecapitalism, phansi! Phansi ngama-candidates who are imposed on us, phansi! Forward with people's candidates, forward! Amandla! Comrade Chair, persons and the officials of the party, let me also recognize again our guests, including our ambassadors and representatives from fraternal organizations who are here. I am being asked to close this Congress, comrades, and I know that I'm standing between you and food and travel. So I will try to do what I've been asked to do by the officials as quickly as possible. Firstly, comrades, I think it's proper that we give you, Comrade Zowane had told us the essence of the judgment today, but I want to give you a legal interpretation of it so that we clear what it says. In summary, no, it's from our own lawyer, but who is a communist, Comrade Ben Martins. Essentially, the judgment, firstly, it says that Uyanus Walush applied to have a review and to set aside the decision taken by the Minister of Justice on the 8th of January 2019, where Minister Masuta at the time refused Wali's parole and release application. The High Court has held that 3 psychological reports concluded that Walush had substantively demonstrated remorse and presented a low risk of reoffending. That's what the judge said today. Thirdly, also, the essence of the judgment says the decision of Minister Masuta of the 16th January 2019 refusing to place Walush on parole is reviewed and set aside. Yes. Fourthly, the matter is referred back to the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services to take a fresh decision within 60 days. So he's not granting him parole. He recognizes that's not the duty of the court, but he says the matter must go back and be finalized within the next 60 days, as Comrade Zowane was saying. And the Minister of Justice is ordered to pay the costs of the application to include the cost of true counsel. Now, politically, what this means is that it's a victory that Walush is not released. But if we are to be honest, the 60 days is the key site of struggle now. That it means as the party we need to be reaffirming our position that Yanush Walush must rot in jail unless he speaks the truth and nothing but the whole truth as to who was he working with to plan and execute the assassination of our late General Secretary, Comrade Chrisan. Which means, therefore, the Central Committee will have to continue to make its own representations opposing the parole. And we'll also support the family as it has taken that. I just thought it's important for us to say that. We will be able to then comment in the media with that understanding. Comrades, we have successfully, I can say, held and concluded our Special National Congress, which is our 4th Special National Congress. You need to even give yourself a little bit of an extended applause for that. We are living here, comrades, having clearly defined further tasks, having evaluated where we come from, where we are, and where we want to go. But I think that it would not be proper, comrades, if we also do not remind ourselves that if the Communist Party is to play its vanguard role, we also have to confront and defeat any regressive tendencies that do not belong to a Communist Party or to any revolutionary organization. Especially, we must fight against all forms of populism. Populism simply means going to promise the people, or the class in our instance, things that you know very well are not easy to do. But because the class would like to hear them, you go and promise the class even when you know you won't be able to do it. Now, as the SACP also, we can't do that because we have a responsibility on things that we say. So we must defeat all forms of populism. We also must defeat a related, a cousin tendency, which is opportunism. We must combat that both inside our own ranks and wherever we are working outside of the structures of the party. Opportunism simply is to try and listen and read what people would like to see. And sometimes you are unable, because many people are saying the same thing. We are afraid to say, much as you are saying this, but here is the direction that the Communist Party is giving, and be able to engage. Ufuna ukuba intandokazi, to be loved by everybody. That's opportunism. We must defeat that. Yes. Yes, Comrade Ugweta has left. He apologized, we released him, because he's dealing with serious energy problems as Minister of Energy. But he normally says, yeah, now he doesn't care. He knows he won't be loved by anybody because he's not money. It's only money which is loved by everybody. So as the Communist Party, we are a class party. Even engaging our own structures about what the party line is. We must also fight against factionalism, comrades. Everywhere we are, including in our own ranks. That's very important. You know, one of the tasks we are faced with now, we've just received a report on the SASCO Congress that it did not take place. They couldn't convene for the first 4 days, and then on the 5th day when they convened, the Congress collapsed on credentials. And delegates had to go back home without having held the Congress, without a program, and without a new leadership. We hope our YCL in particular is listening carefully, because part of our responsibility, comrades, we will say this as leadership, because we are not opportunist and also we are not populist. The SACP has never focused on only building itself. Building the party, we've always done it together with building the motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution. You can't say we have a choice between building the party and building SASCO by the YCL, for instance. And also this factionalism, we must combat it, because from within the ranks of our own movement, there are those who are going into SASCO, COSAS, SANCO, to go and support certain factions instead of trying to act to unite those organizations. We must expose those who are seeing a platform to push their own narrow agendas in the entire mass democratic movement. We must not accept that. That's our other vanguard role that we have as the SACP. But comrades, it's very clear, if we are to be self-critical, we don't prepare enough in the run-up to our congresses. There are certain things that are here, even where we've prepared sometimes, we are not properly taking those preparations into our Congress discussions. We can't do that within the run-up to our 15th Congress. We have to prepare thoroughly. In fact, the Communist Party of China, by the way, only has one central committee per year. One, that's all. And one item also for discussion. If it's state-owned enterprises, the Central Committee will sit for 5 days. It sits in October all the time. And it will discuss one item, state-owned enterprises, and comes up with a line. Because the structures would have discussed prior to that Central Committee, so that then the CC is able to focus. Now, I was interested in how we're accepting most of the reports, because it means the party is united on its program, on what we want, the commission reports. So why don't we focus more of our energies on what unites all of us, whilst we debate what we don't agree with. But we do not allow what we do not agree with to actually interfere with what unites us, on what we agree upon. That's why we need to put more energy if we are to take the party forward. I wish to congratulate those who have been awarded from our branches or districts last night to our heroes that we've honored today, both living and departed. It's very important. I know that Comrade Sol is very passionate about this, and he's the one who normally pushes us. When we finish the agenda, says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Can't finish the Special Congress agenda without these awards. So we appreciate that, Nopala, that you always remind us about our own history, because as the Cubans say, a nation that does not know its history does not have a future. So that's very important. I want to say, comrades, that the weakness, though, in the declaration, what is nice about being General Secretary, you talk last. So no one is going to debate me now. No one is going to disagree. It's my power that you have given me. Let me exercise it. Let me exercise it. Our declaration is weak on gender-based violence. Give the Central Committee the right to actually amend the declaration to actually add and focus on the issue of defeating, the necessity to defeat, unite our people to defeat gender-based violence and the role that must be played by the party. Agreed. Well, it's academic even if you can disagree. Now, here is another important message, comrades, which has come through from, by the way, we must not only, when we think about lessons we must learn, sometimes we tend to think about lessons we must learn from outside. We must also learn from ourselves. What is it that we can learn from the districts and branches that we have been given awards? And one of the lessons we have to learn, we are not going to achieve anything by just taking resolutions here, unless we work to change the balance of forces on the ground. That is crucial. We can make many examples in all our provinces. I don't want when I make one example to be seen that we don't have lessons to learn from other provinces. But Comrade Umajuba, the leadership, the Communist Party, Mpumalanga, they were faced with very difficult situations. They never lamented. They went onto the ground and built a very strong Communist Party. Today, there is improved relations in the alliance in Mpumalanga because of one and only one reason: the power of the party on the ground, working together with COSATU. We can sing and take endless resolutions, unless we change the balance of forces. And when we change the balance of forces, all else will come. We won't even debate whether to contest or not when the time comes, because we would be having power on the ground. That's why we always challenge comrades. If we say we must do this, what are you doing on the ground to work towards that? Don't say one thing, but what we are doing on the ground doesn't show that we are quite capable of doing that. Now, I have confidence in this party. You know, comrades, you must remember this. Close your eyes for 2 seconds and think of a South Africa without the SACP. Disaster. Not just for the working class, but for this country, actually. Because without the SACP, things would have long gone wrong in this country. That's why also we must be careful that we must not allow the SACP to be marginalized in any of our formations. Because without us as communists continuing to do work and to act as a vanguard, this country will not go to where it wants to go. I know we are told that, well, you are cowards, why are you not contesting elections on your own separately? Right there. And normally the people who want that are the people who don't want us anywhere near the broad movement. Yeah, why don't you do that? We don't represent our jackets, we represent a class. So we must not allow that. Even now they're going to go out and say, yes, the SACP has done this or not done that. Remember, we get our guide from what the class is saying. Comrades, it's work that we are going into. We're going into 2020. It's hard work, working on the ground towards the local government election. And we will implement what we said we are going to implement here. But that is why then, Makaban, I want to take this opportunity to really thank all of you for making this Congress a success that it has been. For that reason, I also wish you a very safe journey back home. I'm pleased we are finishing on Thursday today, because I was worried about finishing on Saturday in the middle of a long weekend, and which is the first proper weekend of the festive season, actually, and the traffic is going to be horrible. So we really wish you a safe journey. And don't speed. Don't like this thing of comrades thinking that it's fashionable to speed. Speed kills. So drive safely and also have a festive season. Enjoy yourselves, but don't do wrong things that are uncommunist. Okay? Don't overdo whatever you are doing. Whatever you are doing, don't overdo it. But also, please do take a rest. Don't go and be proud about the fact that you are not resting. That's counter-revolutionary not to rest. Because there is no one who is made of steel. We are all human beings. Let's rest so that we come back in the new year all fresh. Ipati yasetshenzilwa alala. Ipati yasetshenzilwa alala. Ayithengwa ngethenda. Hayibo.
Amandla. Comrades, before you leave, a number of comrades have reported or complained about stomach cramps and diarrhea. As per law, comrades, once more than 20 people in one area have got complaints of such ailments, there has to be processes to ensure that we investigate. Now, people from the Department of Health are around, please consult with them. But beside that, comrades, the media is invited or is requested to remain behind so that they can be able to have a discussion with the officials. As you go back, comrades, drive safe, as has been said. Lunch is served. Go out and have lunch, comrades, please. Comrades, somebody has lost this beautiful, from KZN. Can you come and check to whom it belongs to, comrades from KZN? One of you must come and receive it. Thank you, comrades.
Can you ask the media to remain for questions with the leadership?
The media should remain so that they can have a discussion with the leadership.
When are you moving? When are you moving? No, thanks very much.
Sure.
I'm asking,
Yes, sir.
how I was.
I knew.